August 1944, France, German High Command was watching in growing panic and desperation as Patton's Third Army tore relentlessly across the French countryside like an unstoppable force of nature. Towns were falling daily, sometimes multiple in a single day. Entire German divisions were being systematically encircled and destroyed. The unstoppable American advance was threatening to collapse the entire German defensive line and open the road directly to Germany itself. They made a desperate decision, born of fear and dwindling options: deploy the Tigers. 72 of Germany's most feared heavy tanks, nearly impenetrable from the front, mounting the most powerful gun on any tank in the entire war, were rushed straight into Patton's path with orders to stop the American advance at all costs. Each Tiger could theoretically destroy multiple American Sherman tanks before being seriously damaged. On paper, from a purely technical standpoint, they should have stopped Patton's advance cold and bought Germany precious time to reorganize their crumbling defenses. What happened instead became a legendary case study in military academies worldwide on how superior tactics, tight coordination, and relentless speed can systematically destroy technologically superior equipment. By the time the battle was finally over, fewer than 10 Tigers survived intact and operational. The rest were destroyed in combat, abandoned due to mechanical failure, or captured by advancing American forces. And most remarkably, Patton's advance never even slowed down. The Tigers barely delayed him at all. This is the story of how American determination, superior tactics, and aggressive leadership shattered Germany's elite armor, and why the myth of invincible Tigers died permanently in the French countryside. Subscribe to Frontline America World War II right now, because stories like this, about how tactics beat technology, are exactly what we do here. The Tiger, an absolute monster first. You need to understand exactly what made the Panzer VI Tiger tank so universally feared among Allied forces. The Panzer VI Tiger was an absolute monster of engineering. 56 tons of solid steel armor, so incredibly thick that most Allied anti-tank weapons simply bounced off harmlessly from the front, leaving nothing but scratches. And most terrifying of all, to Allied tank crews, the legendary 88mm gun that could destroy any Allied tank at ranges where Allied guns couldn't even effectively damage the Tiger's thick armor. Allied tank crews were absolutely terrified of Tigers, with good reason. A single Tiger, positioned properly, could hold up an entire column of American armor for hours. American Sherman tanks, the backbone of Patton's armored forces, were completely outgunned and hopelessly outarmored in direct comparison. It typically took 4 or 5 Shermans working together to destroy one Tiger, and the Tigers would usually kill 3 or 4 Shermans before finally going down. The math was brutal and unforgiving. Tigers won almost every direct engagement they fought. German propaganda made them legendary throughout Europe. Allied soldiers whispered that they were invincible. Training manuals warned against engaging them directly. But Tigers had serious weaknesses. Critical vulnerabilities that Patton understood better than most Allied commanders, who simply feared them. First, they were painfully slow. Maximum speed on good roads was maybe 25 miles per hour, and that was optimistic under ideal conditions. Off-road through mud or rough terrain, they were even slower, crawling along. They couldn't effectively pursue a retreating enemy or respond quickly to changing battlefield conditions. Second, They were mechanically unreliable nightmares. The Tiger's complex transmission and temperamental engine broke down constantly, sometimes without warning. For every Tiger actually destroyed in combat by enemy fire, another was abandoned on the battlefield due to mechanical failure that couldn't be repaired quickly enough. Third, they were absolute fuel hogs. A Tiger got less than 1 mile per gallon of precious fuel. In 1944, Germany was desperately short of fuel for all military operations. Tigers could literally run out of gas before they even reached the battlefield if supply lines were disrupted. Fourth, they fought best in defensive positions. Hull down behind berms or buildings, firing at long range where their advantages were overwhelming, they were nearly unstoppable. But when forced to maneuver actively, attack mobile targets, or respond to fast-moving situations, their critical limitations became glaringly obvious and exploitable. The German gamble. The Germans knew all these limitations intimately, but by August 1944, they were absolutely desperate for any solution. Patton's Third Army was advancing so fast that conventional defensive tactics weren't working at all. They needed something that could stop American armor decisively. They needed their superweapon to live up to its fearsome reputation. So they committed nearly a full battalion of Tigers, 72 irreplaceable tanks, to stop Patton's advance. It should have worked brilliantly. It should have at least slowed him down significantly for days or weeks. It didn't even slow him for hours. Patton's anti-Tiger tactics. While other Allied commanders feared Tigers and avoided them when possible, Patton had developed specific, detailed tactics to defeat them systematically. He'd studied German tank doctrine extensively during his career. He knew Tigers were powerful but inflexible, designed for specific situations. He knew they relied heavily on long-range firepower and heavy armor, and he'd figured out precisely how to neutralize those advantages through superior tactics. Patton's anti-Tiger tactics came down to 5 core principles that he drilled into every commander. First principle, never fight them on their terms. Tigers wanted long-range duels where their superior gun and armor dominated completely. So don't give them that fight. Use terrain, smoke screens, and aggressive maneuver to close the distance rapidly or attack from angles where their armor was considerably weaker. Second principle, use combined arms relentlessly. Tigers were nearly invincible against other tanks in direct combat, but they were vulnerable to massed artillery fire, close air support, and infantry with portable anti-tank weapons. Coordinate everything at once and overwhelm them with threats from multiple directions simultaneously. Third principle, attack their supply lines aggressively. Tigers needed constant fuel and ammunition's resupply. They were maintenance nightmares requiring specialized parts. Find their supply dumps, bomb their fuel convoys, force them to move constantly, and they'll break down on their own without you firing a shot. Fourth principle, never stop moving forward. Tigers were fundamentally defensive weapons. If you stayed in one place, they'd find you and methodically destroy you at long range. But if you kept advancing, kept them off balance, forced them to reposition constantly, their mechanical weaknesses would do half your work for you. Fifth principle, accept casualties as necessary. This was the harsh reality Patton understood that other commanders didn't want to face. Yes, fighting Tigers would cost American tanks and lives in the short term, but trying to avoid Tigers cost precious time and time gave the Germans room to organize better defenses. Better to take losses and keep moving than to stop and let the Germans prepare properly. Patton drilled these principles into his commanders relentlessly and without compromise. Tank commanders weren't allowed to retreat when they encountered Tigers. Without explicit permission, artillery officers were trained to respond within minutes to Tiger sightings with massed fire. Fighter-bomber pilots were given absolute priority for anti-tank missions. The result was that Patton's Third Army didn't just fight Tigers differently than other Allied units. They actively hunted them like prey. Late August 1944. The battle begins. Late August 1944. The exact location is less important than what happened tactically. German intelligence had identified where Patton's forces would likely advance based on terrain and objectives. They positioned their Tigers in carefully prepared defensive positions along likely routes. Hull down behind terrain features, guns covering open areas where American armor would have to cross. It was absolutely textbook defensive employment of heavy armor by experienced commanders. American tanks would have to advance across open ground. Tigers would destroy them at long range with impunity. The advance would stall. The Germans would have bought precious time to establish a proper defensive line. That's what should have happened, according to doctrine. What actually happened? Instead, Patton's reconnaissance units spotted the Tiger positions before the main American force arrived, exactly as trained. Within hours of receiving the intelligence, Patton had completely reorganized his advance. Multiple columns attacking simultaneously, different routes to divide German attention, constant movement to prevent the Germans from concentrating their fire. When American forces did encounter the Tigers, they didn't try to fight them head-on in the kind of duel the Tigers were designed to win. They immediately called in artillery support, massive amounts of concentrated artillery fire. Not necessarily to destroy the Tigers directly, the armor was too thick for most shells, but to suppress them, to force the crews to button up inside, close all hatches, and lose visibility of the battlefield. While Tigers were being systematically shelled and couldn't see clearly, American tank destroyers moved aggressively into flanking positions. Tank destroyers were faster than standard Shermans and mounted considerably bigger guns specifically designed to penetrate German heavy armor. They weren't trying to survive a prolonged direct fight. They were trying to get clean side shots where Tiger armor was significantly weaker and vulnerable. Then came the fighter bombers that Patton had arranged. Continuous close air support as a priority. P-47 Thunderbolts carrying rockets and heavy bombs. They couldn't always destroy Tigers from above due to the thick roof armor, but they could damage tracks and disable mobility, force crews to abandon exposed positions, and most importantly, add to the overwhelming chaos and psychological pressure. Overwhelmed from all directions, German Tiger crews found themselves under attack from multiple directions simultaneously in a way they'd never experienced. Artillery raining down from one side, tank destroyers maneuvering aggressively on flanks, aircraft attacking from above. And through it all, American Sherman tanks kept advancing steadily, not stopping to fight prolonged engagements, but pushing forward relentlessly to objectives beyond the Tiger positions. This was exactly what Tigers couldn't handle effectively. They were designed for long-range duels and prepared defensive positions, not this kind of coordinated, multi-threat chaos. The first day, the first Tigers fell not to heroic tank duels depicted in propaganda, but to mundane vulnerabilities. One tiger threw a track trying to reposition quickly under heavy artillery fire. Immobilized and helpless, the crew abandoned it before American forces even reached their position. Another tiger ran completely out of fuel. The supply convoy that was supposed to refuel it hadn't arrived. Patton's fighter bombers had destroyed it 20 miles back along the supply route. The crew desperately tried to tow it with another tiger. Both tanks broke down under the strain. Both were abandoned. 3 tigers were destroyed by American tank destroyers that had successfully flanked their position, while the tigers were fully engaged with Sherman tanks to their front. Side armor penetrated cleanly. Ammunition exploded catastrophically. Complete kills. 2 tigers were hit directly by P-47 rockets during attack runs. One had its track completely destroyed and was abandoned. The other took a rocket through the engine deck, starting an uncontrollable fire that forced the crew out immediately. The crucial part, and here's the crucial part that defines this battle. All of this happened in less than 6 hours. German commanders had positioned tigers to hold defensive positions for days or even weeks. They lasted mere hours before the position collapsed because Patton didn't stop to consolidate after encountering tigers. He didn't pull back cautiously and plan a careful, methodical assault. He called in everything he had available simultaneously: artillery, air support, tank destroyers, and kept his main force advancing without pause. By nightfall of the first day, over 20 tigers were destroyed or abandoned. The remaining crews were visibly rattled and demoralized. They'd expected to dominate the battlefield as they had in previous engagements. Instead, they were being systematically hunted from multiple directions by an enemy that wouldn't stop or slow down no matter what. German desperation, German tank commanders sent desperate, urgent requests: infantry support to protect their flanks, air cover to stop American planes, better communication with German artillery units. But Patton's advance had disrupted German command and control so thoroughly that requests were delayed or went completely unanswered. Tigers that were supposed to be the centerpiece of a coordinated defense were instead fighting isolated, unsupported battles. The second day was considerably worse for the Germans. American forces had learned precisely where tigers were positioned. Artillery targeted those exact positions before dawn with pre-planned fire missions. Tank destroyers moved into ambush positions during the night, while tigers couldn't see them. When the tigers tried to reposition at first light, they were already bracketed by American forces. More tigers fell to mechanical breakdowns than enemy fire. The constant movement required, the stress on crews who couldn't rest, the lack of proper maintenance facilities in the field, it all took a devastating toll. Tigers that could have fought effectively from prepared positions broke down during movement between positions. By the end of the second day, German commanders realized the Tiger deployment had failed completely. Not because Tiger were bad tanks. They weren't. They were excellent. But because Patton's tactics and operational tempo had systematically turned their strengths into critical liabilities. The retreat. By the third day, German commanders ordered the surviving Tigers to withdraw to new defensive positions. But withdrawing Tigers faced all the same problems that had destroyed them in combat. They were slow and couldn't outrun pursuit. American forces were faster and more mobile. Tigers trying to retreat were caught by aggressively pursuing tank destroyers and destroyed from behind where their armor was weakest. They needed constant fuel, Supply lines were disrupted throughout the theater. Some Tigers literally ran out of fuel during the retreat and were blown up by their own crews to prevent capture. They broke down constantly. The mechanical stress of combat and rapid repositioning caused transmission failures, engine problems, track breaks. Disabled Tigers littered the retreat route like a trail of broken steel. And through it all, Patton's forces never let up pressure for a moment. American artillery hammered retreat routes continuously. Fighter bombers strafed German columns mercilessly. Tank destroyers harassed the flanks of any German force trying to establish a rear guard. This was Patton's approach in action. Never let the enemy recover, never give them time to regroup, push constantly, keep the pressure on, make retreat as costly as defense. We never had time to think, one German officer captured during the battle later told American interrogators. We never had time to think, never had time to prepare properly. Every time we tried to establish a position, American artillery was already falling. Every time we moved, their planes found us. Every time we thought we had a moment to rest, their tanks were attacking our flanks. It was impossible to fight effectively under those conditions. That was the genius of Patton's approach. He understood deeply that Tigers were most dangerous when static and prepared. So he made sure they were never static, never prepared, always reacting, always under pressure. The final count. By the time the surviving Tigers managed to withdraw beyond Patton's immediate area of operations, the count was absolutely devastating. Of the 72 Tigers committed to stop Patton's advance, fewer than 10 were still operational. The rest, destroyed in combat, abandoned due to mechanical failure, captured by American forces, blown up by their own crews to prevent capture. The road ahead of Patton's Third Army lay wide open. The superweapon that was supposed to stop him hadn't even slowed him down. What went wrong? So what went wrong? How did Germany's most feared weapon fail so completely? The answer reveals fundamental truths about warfare that go beyond just World War II. Superior technology doesn't guarantee victory. Tigers were better tanks than Shermans in almost every technical specification you could measure. But warfare isn't a technical competition. It's about systems, tactics, and execution. Tactics beat specifications. Patton's combined arms approach, coordinating tanks, artillery, air support, and tank destroyers, overwhelmed the Tigers' individual superiority. One Tiger was better than one Sherman, but one Tiger couldn't handle simultaneous threats from artillery, aircraft, and multiple ground units. Speed and tempo matter more than firepower. Tigers could destroy more American tanks per engagement, but Patton's forces engaged, disengaged, and moved so fast that Tigers couldn't leverage their firepower advantage consistently. Logistics determine effectiveness. Tigers needed fuel, ammunition, and maintenance. Patton's advance disrupted German supply lines so thoroughly that many Tigers became useless, not because they were destroyed, but because they couldn't be supported. Morale and psychological factors are decisive. Tiger crews went into battle expecting to dominate. When they found themselves instead being hunted, suppressed, and destroyed in ways they weren't prepared for, their effectiveness dropped dramatically. The fundamental problem was doctrinal. Germany had designed the Tiger for defensive battles, holding ground, covering retreats, counterattacking to restore defensive lines. They were using Tigers in exactly the role they were designed for. But Patton's tempo was so fast that defensive battles never materialized. By the time Tigers were positioned to defend, American forces were already past them or flanking them or calling in airstrikes. The battle Germans wanted to fight never happened. This is why Patton succeeded where other Allied commanders struggled against Tigers. Other commanders fought the battle the Tigers were designed for. Methodical advances, tank versus tank duels, set-piece battles. Patton refused to fight that battle. He fought a battle of movement, combined arms, and relentless pressure. A battle where the Tigers' advantages didn't matter, and its weaknesses became fatal. What the Germans said after the battle, American intelligence officers interviewed captured German tank crews. Their assessments were remarkably consistent. They hadn't been defeated by better tanks. American Shermans were still inferior in direct combat. They'd been defeated by better tactics and better coordination. One German tank commander said, "We never fought just American tanks. We fought American tanks and artillery and aircraft and tank destroyers, all at the same time, coordinating perfectly. It was impossible." That was Patton's doctrine: everything at once, all the time, never stopping. Strategic implications. The destruction of the Tiger Battalion had strategic implications beyond just the tactical defeat. German high command had committed their best armor to stop Patton, and it had failed completely. This shattered any illusions that superweapons could compensate for American material and tactical advantages. It also reinforced Patton's fearsome reputation among German commanders. They already feared his speed and aggression. Now they feared his ability to destroy their best weapons. When German intelligence identified Patton's forces in a sector, commanders knew they couldn't rely on defensive positions or superior equipment. They needed overwhelming numbers or they needed to retreat. What American forces learned for American forces, the battle proved that Tigers could be beaten. Not easily, not without cost, but consistently if you used proper tactics and maintained aggressive tempo. Tank crews who'd been terrified of Tigers learned they could win. Not through better tanks. The Sherman never became the equal of the Tiger, but through better employment, better coordination, and better leadership. The lesson: 72 Tigers, Germany's superweapon, rushed to stop Patton's advance. Fewer than 10 survived. This wasn't a miracle. It wasn't luck. It was the result of superior tactics, better coordination, and a commander who understood that speed and pressure could defeat superior technology. The Tigers failed not because they were bad tanks. They were excellent tanks. They failed because they were used in a battle they weren't designed for, against a commander who refused to fight on their terms. Patton's timeless lesson. Patton's lesson is timeless. When facing a superior enemy, don't fight them where they're strong. Change the nature of the battle. Use speed, coordination, and relentless pressure to create situations where their advantages don't matter. The Germans sent their best weapons to stop Patton. What they discovered is that the best weapons in the world don't matter if your enemy won't let you use them effectively. The road ahead lay wide open, and Patton never looked back. Conclusion: what do you think made the difference? American tactics or German mistakes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to Frontline America. World War II. For more incredible stories about how determination and tactics defeated superior technology. Hit that like button if you appreciate how we bring these tactical battles to life, and share this with anyone who loves military history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.